This is the Clark Connection Podcast, your weekly dose of inspiration and power. We'll dive deep into the stories and strategies that ignite personal growth and entrepreneurial fire. Join us as we empower you to take control, level up your leadership, and build the life you deserve. Get ready to rise, to thrive, and to finally become the leader of your own destiny. Let's go. Welcome to the Clark Connection Podcast. It is great to be with you here today. I'm your host, Aaron Clark, aka The Coach. And man, do we have a special episode for you today. We're going to have a guest on, Scott Parker, the co-owner and CEO of Rhino Electric. From powering homes to keeping businesses running, he knows what it takes to keep the lights on, literally. But before we dive into the world of electrical work and entrepreneurship, I want to give a quick shout out to my sponsors. Bobby with the Comfy Quest LLC, Andrew with Automate Integrate Professional Services, Wayne with 7K Metals, Chris and Jess with C&J Embroideries, and Joseph with Landscape King. And look, all their information, it's listed below. Reach out to them, shout them out. Tell them Coach Clark sent you, and they do have special pricing for my listeners. Also, if you're wanting to get connected with me, you can reach out to me on all social media at Coach_A_Clark, or via my website, www.coachaclark.com. Hit me up if you're interested in any leadership development, personal growth training. This could be for you. It could be for an event. This could be for your team. The options are limitless. Hit me up. And you can also connect with and follow us at the Coach Clark Connection Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And so quick little highlights about Scott before we get him on here and get connected. He is a master electrician with 34 years of hands-on experience. He's a graduate of Associated Builders and Contractors of Baton Rouge, completing training in electricians level 1 through 4, industrial implementation, advanced motor controls, construction foreman, construction superintendent, estimating, planning, and scheduling. He's the co-owner and CEO of Rhino Electric. Scott is passionate about leadership, entrepreneurship, and building businesses, and he has been proudly married for 30 years. So let's bring Scott on and get connected. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate you having me here, buddy.
Yeah, I tell you, it was pretty impressive about reading your resume and everything. And so I want to kind of dive in and go ahead. What is Rhino Electric?
That's a great question, buddy. Well, first of all, let me tell you this. Today is our 6-year anniversary of starting Rhino Electric. We started April 1st, 2019. And so Rhino Electric is a residential and commercial service electrical company. So what that means is we don't really do new construction. We don't wire houses, and we don't do new construction commercial. We stick to fixing more repair for residential and commercial applications. So somebody may call up, they have some receptacles not working, we'll go fix them. They have lights flickering, we go fix them. They want to add some lights, we do that. So mostly residential and some commercial.
Okay, cool. And so, yeah, today, while we're actually recording it, is the 6-year anniversary. That's awesome. So made it past the initial 5 years, huh?
That's right, yeah.
And so you said you fix a whole gambit of stuff as far as anything at anybody's house. I'm sure you've got some pretty interesting stories that you could tell us about stuff you've come across while fixing people's houses.
Absolutely. There's quite a few things.
And so what would you say is the most intriguing or interesting thing that you've seen?
Oh, man, let me think. So there was one house I went to very recently where they had the kitchen remodeled. Okay. And I was there they were adding a back patio on, and I was there to run some wire, and I went in the attic. And everywhere I looked, there was these splices laying on the insulation everywhere. These, like the wire nuts and stuff, laying on the insulation. Those are supposed to be in boxes with covers on them. And in some of them, they actually had extension cords cut and wired into this, running to like a floodlight on the outside of the house. And it was crazy. So I just immediately went down and told the customer, I said, we need to, so I showed her the pictures. We really need to talk about fixing it. This is a fire hazard. This is dangerous. And then I think the other one that really stands out to me recently, I went to a customer's house to look at doing some work for a swimming pool. And I took his panel cover off and I'm looking in there and he has no main breaker in his electrical panel. So I go outside. There's no main breaker outside. So literally his house was built with no main shut off. And there's like 30 breakers in there. So I asked him, I wanted to educate the customer. I said, would you know what to do in an emergency situation? Would you know how to turn the power off to your house? And he stood in front of his panel a minute. And I said, I'll tell you this. You can probably rake about 5 of them at a time, but you got to turn every single breaker off in here to kill the power to your house in the event of an emergency. Or go outside and pull the meter, which I don't recommend people do.
So, like, how did that? Okay, that's because I've got all sorts of, but like, I'm assuming they used to do houses like that with no main breaker in it.
The house was built in 2009, I think. All I can tell you is the builder must have just did something under the table. I don't know. So I'll tell you a lead on that is I wanted to go start knocking on neighbors' doors and asking them if they have main breakers just to find out if the same electrician wired all the houses on that street.
Yeah,
So it just had to be an oversight by the inspector.
That's wild. I didn't know that. That's why I was like, how old is this house or whatever? Man, crazy.
Yes, sir.
And so now I know prior leading up to this that you were working for other people. That you'd mentioned you were the electrician 34 years, or currently for 34 years. So leading up to this, working with other people, and then decided, all right, I'm going to go off and create my own company. What was the biggest struggle that when you first started Rhino Electric?
So I think the biggest struggle for me, I went out and started networking immediately. I knew I needed to find work, and I had done some networking with the company I worked for prior, so I was familiar with some of the networking groups in town. So I went around and I started just selling myself, and we started picking up work. And what I learned quickly was I was the electrician, I was the estimator, I was the dispatcher, I was the scheduler, I was the janitor, I was the material runner, I was everything, man. I was literally working 12 to 16 hours a day when I started, 7 days a week. And so I would go work, 8, 10 hours a day. And then sometimes after that, go look at an estimate for somebody, to give them a quote on some work they wanted done, come home, work on that estimate till midnight, back up at 4 a.m. or something. And that, I think that was the biggest struggle for me until Jennifer finally decided to come along and join me and take over the office.
Yeah, and that's one of the toughest things. I think that's one of the scariest things about going off on your own is when you're working for an established company, like you said, you have somebody that does the billing, the receiving, the coding, the fill in the blank, somebody that cleans the toilets, and now that's you. You get to do all that.
That's right.
Oh, and so what were things that you did to help overcome, to get yourself more organized and stay on track and get Rhino going in the right direction?
Ooh, that's a good thing. I'll tell you, I kept a notebook with me at all times. So one of the things I think that stood out about me, I asked a good friend of mine who owned a business, what's some advice you can give me? And he told me, answer the phone when it rings. You've got to answer the phone, because one thing in our industry is a lot of tradesmen don't answer the phone and they don't call you back and they don't show up. So it didn't take much to move the bar to be really good at this. You just answer the phone, show up when you say you're going to show up, and do what you say you're going to do. And so I just started learning ways to do that. And as it really started kicking off, that's why I'm thankful that Jennifer came along, because there were times I was going to be there when I said I was going to be there. But, when I'm driving down the interstate and trying to take your information down when you're calling me about a job, it's a struggle. It's a little tough. So I used a lot of voice notes on my phone, did a lot of voice recording on my phone to remind myself of things.
Okay, yeah, no, that's what I was thinking. Like, I guess you couldn't even, Or I guess you could have asked, like, all right, so can y'all text me that?
Yeah,
Um,
that was a way to do it as well. Now, usually, if they call me, if they manage to call me, I say, "Hang on, we're going to three-way Jennifer. We're going to get Jennifer on the phone."
that's
Yeah,
that's pretty smart.
yeah, because I don't want them to have to hang up and call, and I just say, "Hang on, we're going to three-way Jennifer, and she's going to get you information."
No, that's real good. That's real smart. I mean, and well, how did you come up with that idea?
Hmm. I think one was I didn't want it to be an inconvenience that the client or customer would have to hang up with me, get my phone, get the office phone number and call. I just wanted to make it convenient as possible for the customer and then get Jennifer right on there because Jennifer's at the desk. She's at the computer running our CRM. She can take their information, get their email address, their phone number, their address, jot down a scope of work or, a little description of what they want done and has all that.
Okay, cool. So that does make it real convenient too, having somebody that can help with the managing side of that. Uh, but you don't get to start off there.
No, you called me. It was a disaster. I'll just be honest. I mean, we did good as best we could, but it was a bit of a disaster. It was chaos.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how long were you on your own before Jennifer came on board?
Jennifer came on in 2020, just before COVID.
Okay,
So,
so about a year.
mm-hmm.
Woo.
Yeah, almost a year. Yeah.
Okay, and so when did you then when were you able to go from, all right, I'm not working the 12-hour days anymore and I'm not working weekends? How long did it take before that happened?
Wow, that might have been a little while. We started picking up pretty fast, so I started hiring, and I did not have a hiring process. If you could fog a mirror, basically, and spell electrician, no, it wasn't that bad. I hired some great guys, man. I didn't really have a hiring
Easy.
process. I just kind of hit Facebook, started looking for some electricians to come to work. During COVID, I picked up some industrial type electricians that were laid off from the plants. They couldn't work, and they came and filled in with us for a while. And we had to teach them some things about residential, but we made it work. It did require me to be on a lot of the jobs with them, kind of overseeing and making sure we were getting it done right. Because Raven fans is what we're going for when we do our electrical work. We want more than satisfied. We want to go beyond. So I started looking for those guys. So when I learned how to hire based on our core values, interviewing around those, which I'll tell you real quick, is
Mhm.
the first one is WOW. WOW meaning customer service, or customer experience. The second one is integrity, doing the right thing when nobody's looking. Teamwork, no egos here. We work as a team. And safety, not just your own personal safety, but the safety of the person's house we're working at. So when I started learning how to hire around those core values, interviewing that, and finding the guys with the right attitude, I would just kind of picture when they walk in. Do they light the room up? Do I feel the energy when they go in, or does the energy go down? Does it go up or down? And it helps to do that. So I learned how to hire a little bit better. We have a great team now.
Yeah, and it's kind of like that Lou Holt said. I've coached some good ones and some bad ones. I'm a whole
Yeah.
lot better with the good ones.
Well, we talked a little bit before we started. I told you there's no such thing as bad teams, only bad leaders. And I can tell you that
Yeah.
probably a lot of the deal that some of the guys worked for me in the past probably said, man, this guy's chaos. He don't know what he's doing. I was like the little duck on the pond. I look good on top, man, but I was kicking my little feet just
I'll say
crazy
those little
underneath the
feet.
water. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I'll say and spinning around.
Right.
Sometimes one of them didn't work.
That's it. That's it for sure.
But I mean, that's the whole fun and chaos and the stress of being an entrepreneur is you're trying to keep that, like, yes, I am okay right here. Don't look at it. No, don't stop looking over. Don't
That's
just
right.
look right here. I'm okay.
I had a mentor in my life that I worked for. Is one of my favorite bosses. He always told me, Scott, never let them see you sweat. Never let your crew see you sweat.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh yeah, definitely. That is now. What would you say is, well? I know we already talked about that. I was going to ask, like, so what was the biggest difference then going from working with the plant, working with other people? Now, what would that be Because you said you had a couple of industrial people that you picked up. What's the biggest difference there as far as going from working in the plant to working in residential?
So in the plant, you do a lot of you run a lot of conduit, like galvanized, rigid conduit. It has to be cut, thread, bend. You run a lot of cable tray. You pull what's called tray cable, whereas in the house you'll pull Romex into walls, nail-on boxes into wood. I find that troubleshooting residential is when I really, really got deep into the the electrical. That you can't see behind walls. So you go to somebody's house and this receptacle's not working. You really start becoming an investigator. So in the plants, they give you drawings. They give you the color code of the wire. They number the wires, especially in instrumentation type junction boxes. They're numbered 1 through 36. You just got to land them 1, 2, 3. It's pretty simple. When you go into residential, a lot of times, especially service work, there's no drawings. There's no, a customer may give you a little sketch of what they're trying to do or just walk you through something. But the difference in residential service, you got to be well-rounded. You kind of got to be able to get outside the box in your thinking sometimes and really, dive deep into what you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense talking about, like you said, with the customer, well, they didn't have a main breaker. I mean, how many are done by, or jobs are done around the house? I've probably installed a light and a fan that you probably would look at it and go, Aaron, what did you like? I'm just going to redo this, man. This is not safe.
Every day. I try to keep it quiet. I try to make it too bad. We recently got asked by a guy to come look at a job for him that somebody else did. And we had to come in as a third party. And I hope he don't get mad with me. I'm not going to share his name or anything. But we went through the house and, man, literally right off the bat, we started finding stuff. And I was trying to be very professional and not throw him under the bus to the customer and everything. So I stepped out, man. I had to call him. I said, dude, we got to fix all of this. I don't know how to hide this. This is not right. We got to fix it. And so that, there's some people out there that do some shady work. We call it, shoddy work, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And let me ask this then, is it people that are not licensed contractors that are making this happen, or is it people that are, or a combination of both?
I would say it's a combination of both. I've been behind licensed electricians. So in Louisiana, let's kind of jump into that just a second.
Okay.
In Louisiana, one license holder can run the business and all the electricians can work under his license. In other states, the electricians actually have to get licensed, like a journeyman license. Mm-hmm. There's parts of Louisiana, like in New Orleans and Lake Charles, where it's heavy union. They have journeyman and master electrician licenses. And so here, you could be the greatest electrician in the world and hire the wrong people, and they go out and do bad work. So if that kind of makes sense to you.
Yeah. And so what then is the difference between a journeyman and a master electrician?
So a journeyman electrician probably has at least been in the field for about 4 years of experience, 4 to 5 years experience. A master electrician, in most cases, I would say is probably 8 to 10 years at least. A master electrician, to become a master electrician, you actually have to pass a test in my eyes to say that I passed a test that says I'm a master electrician.
Okay.
I won't say that I got 100% on it, okay? But I'll tell you this much. If a doctor got a D, he's still a doctor, but we passed the test.
I was about to say, I thought that D stood for diploma, man.
That's right.
Yeah. And so then, I noticed you on your resume, you'd put, you'd gone level 1 through 4 as an electrician. So how long did that process take to go from level 1 to 4?
It was a 4-year process in trade school. I think they shortened that after I went. I was in one of the very first classes when they started that trade school. Okay. And I think after that, they kind of cut it down to 2 years for the training, So I had to go 2 nights a week for 16 weeks, take a little break and then go back again. So for 4 years, I went to school. And then I took some more advanced classes as well.
Okay, and they just figured, you know what? Dang, after putting up with Scott for 4 years, we don't really. If there are any more out there like him, we got to make this shorter.
Well, I'll tell you this much. I took it very serious, man. I sat at the front seat, and this is way back now, okay? This is in early 90s, 91, 92, 93. I would bring one of those little tape recorders with me and sit on my desk with a tape recorder and record the teacher the whole time. The rest of the guys were back there goofing off and doing things. They were there because their company made them go there, because the companies pay for that. I was there because I wanted to be there. I told them when I came to be the best electrician, not the good electrician. I'm going to be the
Mm-hmm.
best. And, I got picked on and joked about that all the time. And I still strive to this day to better myself in the electrical field. Even though 34 years in, my code book's right here. It's right next to me. And I'm in it all the time, learning more and trying to better myself and my team.
Yeah. And guys, real quick, if you have enjoyed what you've heard so far, give it a quick like, follow, subscribe. On all of our stations, this is going to continue to help us bring great guests and great content like Scott and Rhino Electric. And so, kind of shifting gears a little bit then, Scott, how did you come up with the name Rhino Electric?
Man, I thought you'd never ask. So the cool thing about it is I really like to read, man. I love reading. And you'll see that you asked me about some books and I gave you a few. I'm sure you'll share that in a minute. So,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The name came from the book Rhinoceros Success by Scott Alexander. A friend of mine gave me that book in 1993 and thought I would like to read it. So it took me forever. It's a very small book. And Dave Ramsey calls it a cheesy book, and he gives it to all of his employees. And I read that book, and I always knew that there was something a little bit different about me. And most entrepreneurs probably feel that way. They may not be vocal about it, but you always feel a little different. You're not quite wired like everybody else. You think different. You're a visionary. You're passionate. You're driven. You're a problem solver. There's a lot of things about the entrepreneur, that's there. And so read the book and discovered that I was a rhino. That's the difference. I charged, I look at it like this. I run through the jungle and knock down trees. Not that rhinos are in jungles, but I got 2-inch thick skin, man. I run. And then the rest of the story is about cows. Cows graze out there. They got, you could teach cows to walk through a gate, and you could take the fence down and they'll walk through that same place where that gate was. And I don't mean to offend anybody and calling them a cow or anything. It's just, you can be the me too, me too, me too, or you can get out there and charge the tarp, charge like a rhino. And so that's where we're at.
Yeah, no, and I just wrote that down. I was like, all right, I got to read this Rhinoceros Success by Scott. You said Scott Alexander, right?
Yes, Scott Alexander.
No, and that is true. I was talking with my wife one day, and I said, it's just so different whenever you're the leader, whenever you are creating jobs and creating business. And it's like you don't not everybody knows and thinks like you, so it's hard to even transfer that, like what you're feeling at that moment. Cause,
That's right.
It's so different because you look at things differently. You're doing things differently. I know one that I used to talk with, my grandfather a lot about was oftentimes that you can be in a room full of people and feel like you're the only person in there because those guys don't have a clue of what you're going through.
Yeah.
And so that's a very interesting book right there. I'm definitely have to read that.
It's a short read, man. You can probably read it in like an hour and a half. And it's also on Audible. If you like to use Audible books, you can get it on Audible off of Amazon or whatever. Audible.
And one that I really like, so I recommend this to everybody, all my clients and everybody, is go get you a library card, download the Libby app, and you can get all this stuff for free. You can put it on your phone for free. All you got to do is go get a library card.
Yeah.
That's it. It's awesome. So you don't even have to buy it, guys. Just go get the Libby app, and you can download and listen to a lot of these books for free.
I probably should take your advice. I was paying like $16 a month for the subscription. Download book.
Like what I didn't like about, especially like when I was hot shotting, is I was spending 8 hours in my vehicle running the roads. So with Audible, if I paid $16 a month, they got me one book. At least at that time, that was, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if it's changed, but I was like, all right, so I listened to the book. I guess I can listen to it again. And after a little while, I'm like, I'm tired of listening to the same book over and over again. If I just went and bought a book, it's $16. And then when I got introduced to the Libby app, I was like, oh, this thing's awesome. They
Yes,
cancel
sir.
that subscription quick.
I'm about to look at that. I don't have a library card, man. I need to check that out. Thanks for
Oh,
sharing.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's one of my absolute favorites. And I'll tell any and everybody who will listen to me, go get that.
Learned something new today. Check.
Yes. And now we can call it quits. And that's the end of the ships. Mission accomplished. But, and I think that's important too, as you were touching on it, the reading. So, and I know this is going to kind of jump, but that you had a bunch of books that, and I've known you for quite a few years, and I did not realize that you were the bookworm that you are. So that's one I've believed, that all leaders are readers, but not all readers are leaders.
That's
And
correct.
so you started throwing out a bunch of books, and I'm like, ooh, 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 I got to add to the list. So how important is that for you as the leader for personal growth and development?
I think it's very important. I think the other thing that's important is not just reading the books, and I had to learn this, and I'm still learning it. Is you got to take the things that you get from those books and you have to implement it.
Mm,
You can read all the books you want to do, but if you don't do anything about it, all you've done is read a book. So you got to highlight, you got to make marks in the books. There's a lot of things that I've learned through books. I mean, each book that I recommend, I probably can't tell you the whole book, but I can tell you one thing that stood out to me in that book that changed my life.
right. And I did a previous podcast on this. I called it "Knowledge Isn't Power." Um, and so I did get people like, what do you mean knowledge? I'm like, no, it's applied knowledge. Yeah, I can, like you
Yeah,
said, if I read all these books behind me and never do anything about it, do I
yeah.
really know anything? Um,
The other thing about that is I was born into the trades. My dad was a carpenter. And I mean, when I was in diapers, he was taking me to construct. I've been around construction my whole life, is what I'm saying. My grandfather was an electrician. My uncle was an electrician. My other two uncles were carpenters. I mean, we were blue collar workers. And so I was raised in a blue collar mentality. We
mhm.
worked paycheck to paycheck. There was things like that. And I knew, and that's one thing about entrepreneurs that stands out to me is they want to better their life than what they had growing up. And it's not that my parents did the best they could. My parents separated. I was raised by my single mom. She worked 3 jobs. I wanted a better life for myself. And the only way I could do that is I had to grow. And I think it was, I heard a guy say one time that your income and your personal growth never get far from each other. So if I wanted my income, if I wanted to make myself more valuable to the marketplace, I had to grow. I had to teach myself to be a better leader. And by doing that, I've always moved up. I actually moved into a site manager position with a company where I was responsible for overseeing about 200 employees prior to Rhino Electric, and that was stressful.
Yeah, 200 employees. Sheesh. I don't even want to pretend to imagine. I mean, as a teacher, I often had 36 per class, but
Yeah,
you at least got, after when that bell rang, you got to send them away.
that's right.
Wouldn't want all 200 all day. Good night.
Well, I didn't run it by myself. I had other supervisors, other superintendents. I had foremen. I had leaders. So and then that's when I had to learn how to delegate. Man, I'm a bit of a control freak, and I wanted to control everything. And I had to learn, man, that I couldn't do it all by myself. I had to build a
Mm,
team, and I had to trust that team, just like we were talking about earlier. I had to find people smarter than me.
absolutely, yeah. And that's hard because they. So me as the leader, you as the leader, I know how good I am at doing these certain tasks, and it's hard to want to say, all right, you know what, Scott, I'm going to trust you to do this. Or in your case, Jennifer, I'm going to trust you that to handle booking the calls. It's yours, and then slide it across the table.
That's right.
Um,
But I had a guy tell me this one time: TBV, trust but verify.
yes, yes. And I think that's one that a lot of new leaders, I'm not going to say young leaders because I don't want people to think it's always the young people, but the new leaders that mess up as once they start, all right, I got to get this off my table and just push it over here and never go back and check to make sure, did they actually do what I asked them to do or what I expect them to do? And I always say, inspect what you expect.
That's right. I was just about to say that. Great minds think alike, and so do we.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then I think the other thing too with that is I love how John Maxwell said it as far as like learning to assign things to other people. He started looking and going, who in here can do what I'm doing right now? At least 70% as good as I'm doing it.
Yeah.
If I can find somebody who can do it 70%, I can teach them, and then they can eventually start doing it better than I'm doing it. So I'm going to look for who I can pass things along to.
Yeah, I've done that in my business now. I've kind of let the guys go out, and I have to let them make mistakes. We can fix it. And they'll make small mistakes. Thankfully, it's small mistakes. And then we take those small mistakes and we train once a week. We meet and we do a little 1-hour training where we kind of go over some things that we did last week. Maybe I try not to beat the guys up on it as best I can. I try to really praise them for the things they did right. But I say that we do have a learning opportunity here, and I want to make sure we cover it and go over that. And then what I've learned to do is if you put out the same fire more than once, it's time for a procedure for that, and it's time for training. You need a process on how you handle that so that you can, because it's going to happen again. Because I know that there was things that happened to me in business that I learned, and then my employees came along and did the same thing. Had I taken that learning and passed it on to them, we could have avoided some of that.
Yeah, and I'd actually wrote that down was to circle back, and I'm glad you had brought it up, was the processes. I think that's super important that a lot of us take for granted is by putting together and implementing those processes and procedures and having that standard. Well, if this problem A happens, we do this step 1, 2, and 3. If problem B happens, we do step 2, 4, 7, and so on and so forth.
So there's probably never a time you're going to take all the chaos out of being a business owner and running a business. But I can tell you, as you build processes and procedures, SOPs, you kind of get into more of a managed, organized chaos, if you will. Because whether you like it or not, if you're a business owner, you have a system. Whether you like it or not, you have a system. And when you start hiring employees and you don't have a consistency in your system, the way you do things, the employee that you've hired is going to do it the way he knows how to do it. Rather than, so what we're trying to do here is build consistency. And that's our first series of our training was consistency in service calls. So that no matter what employee I send, you're going to get the same experience, if you will, from Rhino Electric. So.
Right. Well, and that's what makes that, like the franchise fast food restaurants, so appealing is I know when I show up to Burger King, it's going to be the same Whopper every time.
That's right. Yeah.
It doesn't matter if I'm in New York City or if I'm in Los Angeles, California. It's going to be the exact same one.
Yeah.
And I kind of giggled as you said about the organized chaos. That was what my assistant told me today. So I'm working with onboarding 2 new people, and she was fixing something on my computer. She was like, Mr. Clark, I've got to, like, I don't know what you're doing. She came over to look at, and she went, you're going to go work with them over there. I can't take this anymore. You're organized chaos. I just can't have.
Yeah. Well, I drive Jennifer crazy, trust me.
Yeah. In more than one way, right?
Well, entrepreneurs have like thousands of thoughts every day, and I've always got a good idea, shiny object, and she has to ground me, and I have my guys ground me as well too. I try to. What I have found is visionaries need other visionaries. Mm-hmm. So when you have a lot of vision, you're gonna drive people crazy. And I drive Jennifer crazy a lot, constantly talking about business and my ideas. So I've had to reach out and find other business. Like I joined a mastermind group in Baton Rouge with other entrepreneurs, and we meet once a week and we can bounce ideas off each other. And they can tell me if I'm crazy or whatever, or they may buy into my idea and really add some value to it and say, man, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And then once we kind of tweak that out, then I'll decide to, run it by the team and we'd see where it goes from there, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely one that's important. And speaking of connecting with people, guys, if you're liking what you're seeing, enjoying it, look, follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can find me at Coach A. Clark, or the Clark Connection podcast. I would love to be connected with y'all there to continue giving you great stuff. And so as we're kind of starting to wind it down, we've talked a lot and mentioned about the personal growth, but and you had gave me a whole gang of books that you believe all entrepreneurs should read. And so let's kind of talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Go ahead, Steve.
So what books, like what were the books what book would you recommend that everybody read first?
I think that of course, the Bible is a very important book. We realize that. But I think the second book from the Bible is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I think that is an absolute must read. There's a lot of things in there, man. You'll learn things about a person's name is the sweetest thing that they hear in their ears, is being able to. And that's how I learned how to remember people's names, was this book right here. I went to a chamber meeting the other day, and I introduced myself to everybody in the room. And one guy spoke up, okay, repeat all those names back. And I went, Lacey, Megan, Chris, Hope. You know, I went through there, and I impressed myself that I can remember those names. But I've learned to repeat somebody's name at least 2 or 3 times to try to remember that. And I learned that through How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's one thing that really stands out to me in that book.
Yeah, and that was definitely one of the things that I thought stood out, was that is they making sure not just learning their name, but how to say it properly,
mm-hmm.
and spell it properly and all that other good stuff. And just it's one that I read every year. It's on top of the Bible. So like I read the Bible every year, and then I hadn't read it yet this year, but that's definitely How to Win Friends and Influence is definitely on my top that I think everybody needs to read.
Sure. I think the next one, for mindset would be Think and Grow Rich. And there's going to be people that have different opinions about that book, because it's a mindset book. And if you have trouble with that one, then I would shift you over to The Strangest Secret by Napoleon Hill too.
But, and I got Think and Grow Rich up.
I'm sorry. Think and Grow Rich is by Earl Nightingale. Napoleon Hill is Think and Grow Rich.
There's Strangest Secret.
Now that one absolutely changed my life. I listened to that thing. You can find it on YouTube. Just look that up on YouTube and listen to it. It's about 30 minutes.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. I've actually never read The Strangest Secret, but I've listened to it. I'll never forget Wayne giving me the copy of that. Yeah. And I was like, oh my goodness. And
so let me give you a challenge. If you haven't listened to The Strangest Secret, listen to it on Audible or whatever. Just go on YouTube and get it. And listen to it for at least 21 days in a row. All right? But I did that in October of 2013. A guy that I was following on Facebook threw the challenge out, and I said, okay, I'll take it. So 21 days, I listened to this old man from the 50s or whatever say all this stuff, And it was on Interstate 10, right around the Chippewa exit, 5:43 in the morning, October the 31st. I started on October the 1st, so it was 31 days into the book. I kept myself read every single day. I listened to it on the way to work. And all of a sudden, it hit me that you become what you think about the most. Mm-hmm. And what I started realizing was I was saying things and not realizing, like people would ask me, hey man, what job you going to next? I want to go with you. I said, man, whatever job they underbid, wherever the duck bank is, wherever, I was saying negative things. And then I would try to follow it up with a positive by like, but my boss knows I can handle it. He knows who to send. He knows who's going to get the job done. I'm going where nobody else can handle it. And I started calling those jobs to myself. So guess where I was going, where the duck bank was, so I started that morning. By the time I got to the governor's mansion curve, coming back up towards the new bridge, I was heading to Dow Chemical. Yeah. I started just an affirmation. I started saying things about myself. I get paid from the neck up. I don't get paid for my back end. I get paid for what I know. I'm the hardest worker. I can't remember exactly everything I said, but I started repeating these things. Within a few days, things started to change for me. And I won't get into the long part of the story, but it just really impacted my life.
Yeah. And definitely go do that, guys. That was one that changed my life. Mine, when I got introduced to it, it was 2015. And it was right before It was in July or August because it was right before football season started. I do remember that much. I don't remember which one, but it was quite the, and on day like 10, 11, 12, it was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah,
I'm going to do it.
you got to be disciplined. You kind of got to push yourself to do it.
Because he's like, and that's the strangest secret.
Yeah, though.
If, oh man, if you can get past that in the, it's, oh, that is a good one. That's a good, real good. Oof.
Yeah.
So what else you got, man? You throwing out some gold right here.
I appreciate that, man. It's nothing original. It's all stuff I've read somewhere. But if you want to talk some more about books, man, we had Good to Great by Jim Collins, which is one that for business owners, learning how to get the right people in the right seats on the bus to take the business where it needs to go. Mm-hmm. It's a great book.
Yeah, I just put it up. That was one that another one of my friends. I've actually had several friends recommend it since I heard him recommend it, and I was like, all right, it's on my list of books coming to me because I was like, I gotta get this book. If that many people are recommending it, I've got to read it.
Yeah, and you asked me how I stayed organized, and I was just glancing down. I remember "Eat That Frog" by Brian Tracy was a short little book that helped me start to learn how to prioritize things and get the thing done that you hate the most. Get that done first. Go ahead and get that out of the way, and then you'll enjoy the thing. You do the things that you enjoy. But eat the frog first. Go get that over with. Stop procrastinating and just do it. And that it was impactful,
Yeah, I don't imagine. I've listened to it and every time I hear it, it's just like, eat a frog.
Eat a frog.
I mean, if we're talking like frog legs or something, put it in a little batter, fry it up. That ain't too bad, but how they're talking about it's not that good.
Correct. That's right. And then the other one we talked about was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Great leadership book. That's where I learned that there's no such thing as bad teams. And you listen to that book, you'll see what I'm saying. There's only bad leaders. There's a great story, and I won't run it for you, but a great story when they were Navy SEALs and they were in training, and they took like 10 teams out, and they had to carry the little dinghy boat out to the water, and they had to do all this kind of stuff. And there was just one team that kept winning. They took the leader of that team and put him on the team that kept losing. And it didn't take him long. He brought that team up to his level of leadership, and they started winning. And then they took the guy that was leading the team that was losing and put him with the team that was winning, and they started losing. So it was impactful to realize that you got to raise that lid. Like John Maxwell says, you got to raise the leadership lid.
Yeah. Well, and one that always, with that has always stood out to me, and I know this will probably upset my LSU fans on here, but it always stood out to me is, that when Nick Saban went from LSU to Miami, and then 2 years later he ended up at Alabama, and those Alabama teams were not good. Like, they were junk when he got there, and just almost immediately he's like, yep, I'm beating almost everyone right now, except for ULM. He lost to LSU and ULM. Yeah. Boom! Louisiana owned him that year, baby. But he did, and the team he's playing at LSU is the team that he recruited to beat, and so almost beat him. So that was one that always jumped out at me, was how important the leader is. And then you'd mentioned two other ones. Was the entrepreneurial leap?
These were more geared to entrepreneurs. So if you thought, I started my business when I was 48 years old. Okay. And it was really because Jennifer and I both found ourselves unemployed for reasons outside of our control. Part of hers was she had both hips replaced and became disabled. And that's kind of how Rhino got started. We were both unemployed. I said, don't worry, I can do electrical work. We'll figure this out. And we did that. But The Entrepreneurial Leap by Gino Wickman, really good book. That will help you determine, like, are you really an entrepreneur? Just read the 6 traits of an entrepreneur and see how that applies to you. See if you fit in those traits, and you'll know if you're an entrepreneur. Or if you started a business and you're chaos and you're going crazy, read the book. There's a lot of great information in there. And then the next one that I'll tell you that is so powerful, I kind of call it the Bible of the business, like the business Bible book. And that is the E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. It goes into talking about building systems and processes and things. It's a very good storybook. I love a good storybook that tells stories about people's businesses and how they got started and, how they had breakthroughs and things like that. So it's a great storybook to read.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's kind of like, what was the one of the 6 Working Geniuses that I'd read? That was such a good one to go through and read. But and as busy as you are, so, I mean, you'd said 12 to 18-hour days. How did you actually get the time to read these books? Like, how did you do that?
Mostly Audible, a lot of Audible, or I would just get up early in the morning. I have a quiet time at like 4 in the morning. It don't matter what time I'm gonna get up, probably about 4:30 in the morning. I've been doing it for years. It's just my internal alarm clock goes off about that time. And I like to get up and just think a little bit and read. And sometimes I'll read myself to sleep. Like if I'm kind of wound up a little bit and I need to relax, I'll lay in bed. I have a Kindle Fire I've had for years.
Yeah.
I can't believe the thing still works. And I get the Kindle books and I'll lay in bed and read that and I have this little elastic strap that holds it to my hand. That way, if I fall asleep, I don't drop it.
Yeah. But, and one that I think is just so important that as a leader, business owner, fill in the blank, it's so important. And that's why I always ask that with people is to be able to read, to constantly be working on yourself, to work on yourself harder than you do anything else. Because at the end of the day, the most appreciable asset that you have is between your ears. It's your brain, your ability, like you said, to solve problems and think and go through and do all these different things. And just, it always amazes me the amount of people that find themselves stuck that aren't trying to learn and grow.
That's right. And podcasts too, man. Great podcasts like this where you can pick up little tips, maybe hopefully I shared some sort of value tonight that, somebody may pick up a book and change their life.
Yeah. No, and that's what I want. That's why I started the whole thing is I just wanted to be able to share. I started learning a whole lot. I was like, we don't have enough people that are working on personal growth, that are sharing about leadership and how to be better than what they are today. It's awesome. It's awesome to be able to do that and share that with people.
Yeah. I'll share this with you. So you asked me before, like, what was my current struggle? And I'd been thinking about that. And I think what it is, I was telling the guys today in our training, I recently kind of posted myself as the CEO of Rhino Electric. I've always considered myself as a co-founder, a co-owner, the master electrician or whatever. And so I'm growing myself to be the CEO of a company. And being a blue collar guy that works with his hands, I'm an electrician. Man. That's what I love doing. I love playing with electricity. But I also want to build a company. I want to build a legacy. I want to take care of my guys that work for me. I want them to be taken care of. And so I want to build something really good and treat them right, that we can hopefully one day. I don't think my son's going to want to take it over. So my idea would either be sell it to my employees or sell it to private equity or whatever we decide to do with it. And, hopefully me and Jennifer would have a great retirement and we can invest some money and be philanthropists and give a bunch of it away, and everybody's going to start calling me, give me some.
Well, that's what I was about to say. You've got my number, right? I just want to make sure, just in case you don't, it's 225.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
No, and that's, constantly. That's one I've always been amazed at. The average CEO reads, I think it's 54 books, somewhere between 48 and 54 books a year.
I set out to do that. I said I was going to read 60 books a year when I would learn that about CEOs.
Yeah. I'll say I'm not there yet. So I'm still working on just one a month. And
well, I started.
I'm actually proud of myself. I'm on my 5th one right now this year.
Awesome. Good for you. I found ways to shorten that up a little bit. They have some little business books. I used to get on this auto ship, and man, you can read them in like 30 minutes or so. So I count that as a book. That's a book, man. It's in print. It's a book. So I would count that as my 60. So I'd read like, 3 or 4 of those. And then while I'm reading one, big book, I guess, if you'd call it.
Yeah. That's a struggle too for me is I tend to like, okay, let me read this one and this one and this one and this one. And that's usually what takes me so long to get through is I want to pick up like 5 of them instead of just do one, stay with one, finish one.
That's right.
And so, Scott, what book are you currently reading?
I am currently reading Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz. It is a book that gets into, you see it there, design your business to run itself. And so it has a lot to do with getting the right people in place, hiring smarter people than you, making a system so that the system runs the business more than the people do. If that makes sense to you, if you understand what I'm saying. You develop a system and everybody, just like you were saying, McDonald's and Burger King. You develop a system and let the system run the business and the people run the system. And so it's helping me try to figure out how to get out of the way of my employees, get out of their way. And I tell them that all the time. Let me get out of your way and let you do what I hired you to do or what you're here to do. And they love it. So I try to stay out of their way as best I can,
Absolutely. And so, Scott, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, any of the listeners want to reach out and get in touch with Rhino Electric, how do they reach out to you?
It's very simple, man. I'll give you the office number first if you want to call us. Jennifer will be glad to answer the phone. You can reach us at 225-324-3851. My email address is listed there. It's scott@rhinoelectric.net. And I'm all over social media, most active on Facebook because I am 54 years old now. And so that's where the old people hang out is Facebook. But I do have Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat and all that, but I use Facebook.
And MySpace.
Hey, I do have a MySpace account, man. I tried to get on it the other day. It won't work anymore. It doesn't play the song that it used to play. But yeah, I'm MySpace, baby.
And guys, look, that is all listed below. It's in the description. Scott, I appreciate you getting on, sharing some wisdom with us and just kind of what it takes to be an entrepreneur. I really appreciate it.
Man, I'm glad to be here. I'm honored that you think enough of me to have me on the show and share me with your audience, your guest. And I'm hoping that a lot of my friends will decide to hit that subscribe button and join this podcast, man, where they can learn a lot of stuff from you.
Yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
You.
Absolutely. We'll definitely have to do it again. Thanks for coming on.
Love it, man. Thank you.
Man, wasn't Scott great? I tell you, I got a whole bunch of nuggets in that episode. But I want to share just a few key takeaways with you. Then, first thing that he talked about was starting a business requires you to wear many hats and work long hours. Now, he talked about all the different jobs that he did and the fact that he was working 12 to 16 hours a day in the beginning. The next thing he really touched on was how customer service is a key to standing out in the electrical industry. And guys, it's not just the electrical industry, it's in any industry. Customer service is key. He then talked about how personal growth is closely tied to your income growth. They go hand in hand all the time. Then next, he talked about how important it is and how mindset plays a significant role in your success. And I really loved this one, how he talked about leadership can transfer teams from bad to good. And that there is no such thing as a bad team. It's just bad leaders. Very important. And so if you are a leader and your team is struggling, it's probably on us. Now, and speaking of, if you're looking for leadership or personal growth training, this could be for you, it could be for your team, it could be for an event, reach out to me. I'd love to be able to help you and inspire you on your journey. Look, all of my contact information, it is listed below. It's up on the screen. Reach out to me, get connected, and again, would love to help you on this journey. And remember, guys, you don't need to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. So keep leading, keep growing, and keep innovating. Until next time, stay inspired and connected, and I will see you on the next episode of the Clark Connection Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Clark Connection podcast, where my goal is to add value to you. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow the show. You can also connect with me via my website, coachaclark.com, or on all socials at coach_a_Clark. The links are in the description. Huge thanks to my sponsors, Wayne with 7K Metals, Bobby with the Comfy Quest LLC, Andrew with Automate Integrate Professional Services, Joseph with Landscape King, and Chris and Jess with C&J Embroidery. Hey, we look forward to bringing you more great content. See you next week.